All right, 23 minutes before 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Thursday morning, November 21st, 2013. It is time for us to deliver the news to you. We take the news from around the world and we shorten it. We get to the point. We cut to the chase. We save you time. You will be able to hear between 20 and 25 stories this morning, I predict, as we go through the news. And we will also give you the resources that we use so that you can look into the story and perhaps see the full story if indeed you are interested in doing that. The show is called News Bites, and Robert and I put this together each day to put the news back in News Talk, as well as to give you an opportunity to catch up on news happening around the world. This first story is from the Telegraph, which is a newspaper in England, and it was just released about an hour ago. Let me read it to you. Iran's foreign minister and the European Union's foreign policy chief met for almost 3 hours this morning as a new effort to break the deadlock over Tehran's nuclear ambitions reached a crucial stage. On the table is a draft agreement left over from the last meeting 11 days ago. Mohammad Javad Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister, and Baroness Ashton, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, spent most of this morning discussing this text in Geneva. A diplomat close to the talks said the mood was upbeat and positive, but cautioned that a great deal of detailed work remained to be done before an agreement would be possible. Lady Ashton and Mr. Zarif abandoned the formal setting of the Palais des Nations in Geneva, I guess the nation's palace, right? And talked instead in a conference room of the Intercontinental Hotel where the Iranian delegation is staying.
This is a story out of Tallahassee. More bad news for seafood workers in Apalachicola. They won't be able to harvest oysters on weekends anymore. Apalachicola Bay usually produces 90% of the state's oysters, but a prolonged drought and a lack of fresh water from rivers in Georgia has decimated the oyster beds. Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam says this is one more reason the state needs to get serious about water policy. The ban on weekend harvesting is supposed to give the oysters time to recover and rebuild their population. This ban will remain in effect until the end of May.
President Barack Obama told a gathering of corporate executives on Tuesday that he's confident that his model of health care will work in the end, but he said he's going to have to rebrand it to sell it to a skeptical public. He didn't use the word Obamacare once on Tuesday in talking about his health care law, but he mentioned the Affordable Care Act 7 times. So, look, I am confident that the model that we built, which works off of the existing private insurance system, is one that will succeed, Obama told the Wall Street Journal CEO Council annual meeting in Washington, D.C., going on to say, quote, "We are going to have to fix the website so everybody feels confident about that. We're going to have to obviously remarket and rebrand, and that will be challenging in this political environment." And that comes from CNS News.
North Korea may be pushing a highly potent form of methamphetamine into the United States, a development that came to light in an indictment unsealed today in New York. 5 foreign nationals arrested in Thailand are charged with being part of an Asia-based syndicate that plotted to smuggle meth produced in North Korea to New York. Court records indicate that the suppliers agreed to sell 100 kilograms of North Korean meth at $60,000 a kilogram to a drug trafficker who was actually working with the Drug Enforcement Administration, according to ABC News.
And the next story is from the Associated Press. About 150, starts earlier than that. This is from just this morning, by the way. Grieving neighbors and friends are struggling to understand the horrific killing of 8 members of a religious family, including 3 young children, a massacre that prosecutors in the Mexican border city say was over a $115 debt the father couldn't repay. About 150 people gathered yesterday evening at the Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Hall in Ciudad Juarez for the funeral service of 4 members of the family whose head, Maximo Ramiro Sanchez, worked as a mechanic and fixed and sold used cars. The family were honorable people dedicated to the church and to God. They would come to the church's meetings every Thursday and Sunday. That from a statement issued by a church elder. This is something I can't explain. We are all in shock, he said.
This is a story from the Washington Times. A new CBS poll puts President Obama's sinking approval rating at an abysmal 37%. Only 37% approve of President Obama's job performance, due in large part to the bungling of the Affordable Care Act rollout. For Obama, it is a stunning 9-point drop in a 1-month period. The health care rollout was supposed to represent the president's crowning achievement, a grand first step towards universal health coverage, but instead the healthcare.gov rollout has been a study in government lies, embarrassing website crashes and glitches, wastes of millions in taxpayer dollars, mismanagement, cronyism, confusion, and utter despair.
This is from Fox News. It's no secret that Sarah Palin is mighty steamed at MSNBC and Martin Bashir over his despicable remarks about the abusive treatment he imagines for her, and now she's doing something about it. The former Alaska governor and Fox News contributor was scheduled to sit down with Matt Lauer for a Christmas season interview, and that's now toast. Palin has now canceled Lauer's scheduled trip to Wasilla. A source close to her tells the Fox News network. It's not because Palin is upset with Lauer or the Today Show, but as a protest against NBC for not taking action against Bashir. In fact, Palin once sat in as a Today co-host. Tim Crawford, treasurer of Palin's Political Action Committee, had told NBC News President Deborah Torres and MSNBC President Phil Griffin that Americans deserve to know that your network doesn't condone violent and hateful rhetoric, unquote.
With just over a month remaining in the year that has seen the S&P 500 rocket to new records, one of the rally's drivers could have peaked: stock buybacks. In the last few years, major U.S. companies, including IBM, Apple, and ExxonMobil, have dramatically boosted share repurchases. Overall, Federal Reserve data shows corporations are the primary buyer of equities, while pension funds, mutual funds, and households have increasingly been sellers in recent years. The reduction in share count helps improve earnings per share figures, one of the more important metrics investors use for valuing stocks, reported by Reuters.
And this is from ABC News. 2 years after Austin Hatch survived the second plane crash of his young life, the high school student said he is on the rebound and eager to play college basketball next year at the University of Michigan. Basketball has given me something to shoot for. It has been my goal, he said. He went on to say, when I woke up from the coma, I told people I am going to play basketball again. Shortly before the 2011 crash that killed his father and stepmother in Charlevoix, Michigan, Hatch had verbally committed to the University of Michigan. This week, he signed a letter of intent. In 2003, Hatch and his father survived a plane crash that killed his mother and 2 siblings. His father, Dr. Stephen Hatch, was the pilot in both crashes. Signing with the University of Michigan has been a goal of mine basically since I woke up from a coma, Hatch said. Last week, it was kind of surreal to see my name on that dotted line and actually sign the letter. Before the crash, Hatch was a basketball standout at Canterbury High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where he averaged 23 points and 9 rebounds per game. Wow, he survived 2 plane crashes that killed much of his family. Wow.
A new ride at a Kansas City, Kansas water park claims it will debut as the tallest and fastest water slide in the world, with an approximate 17-story drop and reaching speeds of roughly 65 miles per hour. The Verrückt will be taller than Niagara Falls, taller than the Statue of Liberty from her toes to the torch, and twice the height of the tallest wave ever surfed, the Shittenbahn Kansas City water park announced this week. The company is declining to share. I forgot the L, I'm sorry. It should be Schlitterbaum. Oh gosh, the company is declining to share exact numbers until an official measuring event accompanied by Guinness World Records in the spring, but it did reveal the verrückt means insane in German. The thrilling ride was designed by Schlitterbahn water park slide innovator and co-owner Jeff Henry, who repurposed pieces of railroad tanker cars to create the structure.
A 17-story tall water slide.
Yeah.
That's
65 miles per
something
hour.
I won't be going down. President Barack Obama awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, to 16 people, from former President Bill Clinton and iconic talk show host Oprah Winfrey to the late astronaut Sally Ride, in ceremonies that were held yesterday. This is one of my favorite events every year, said the president. This year it's just a little more special because this marks the 50th anniversary of President Kennedy establishing this award. Obama noted that members of the Kennedy clan were in attendance: Robert Kennedy's widow, Ethel Kennedy, and JFK grandson and son of U.S. Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, as well as Jack Schlossberg.
Guantanamo is a military base America still has in Cuba. It is where we are keeping the most dangerous terrorists captured since 9/11. America has a lot of maximum security prisons. Many of them are the homes of state or federal death row, where condemned prisoners are held. These men and women, almost all of them American citizens, are generally held in small cells for 23 hours a day. They might get out for solitary exercise 1 hour a day. What about the most dangerous captured terrorists in the world? What about the savages that routinely pelt American military personnel with bodily fluids and feces? In Guantanamo, terrorism is yet another mind-blowing waste of taxpayer dollars, reported by the Washington Times.
The next story from the New York Times, out of Baghdad, just 16 minutes ago, this one was released. Explosives hidden under fruit and vegetables aboard a delivery truck detonated this morning in a crowded market selling fresh produce north of Baghdad, killing 28 civilians and wounding 52 other people. This is just one day after a wave of car bombings convulsed the capital, according to medical and police officials in Baghdad. The dead from the latest bombing in Sadia in Diyala province included 8 women and 6 children ages 8 to 14 years old. The driver of the Kia truck asked workers to unload his cargo and then walked away. It exploded shortly afterward. I went with my mother to get some fruit. I don't know where she is now. I can't find her, was the statement from an 11-year-old boy who was searching for his mother after he was wounded in the arm and in the head. The boy gave his name only as Ahmad. The fate of his mother was not known. Yesterday, also targeting public spaces where Iraqis congregate to shop, a wave of apparently coordinated bombings hit bakeries and public markets in Baghdad, killing at least 42 people and wounding more than 90, many of them as they rushed to buy supplies during a break in heavy rainstorms, according to police, residents, and medical officials.
Oh my God. This is a report from the BBC. The U.S.-based advocacy group Human Rights Watch has accused Iran of violating its legal obligations towards refugees from Afghanistan and failing to protect them from abuse. In a report published yesterday, the Human Rights Watch says thousands of Afghans have been summarily deported from Iran without a hearing of their right to remain. Thousands of Afghans enter Iran illegally every year. About 2.4 million Afghans are resident in the country. In its report, the Human Rights Watch says Iranian officials have in recent years limited legal avenues for Afghans to claim refugees or other immigration status in Iran, even as conditions in Afghanistan have deteriorated.
This next story is from NBC News. A behemoth Boeing air freighter bound for McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas, landed last night at a nearby smaller commercial airport by mistake, and officials scrambled to come up with a plan to get it back in the air. More than 10 hours after the mix-up, an airport official said they had managed to turn around the Dream lifter on the runway and had calculated that it could take off on the shorter runway. The 747 aircraft, one of the largest cargo planes in the world, touched down safely at Jabara Airport at 9:38 p.m. Central Time yesterday, according to officials there, 8 miles from its intended destination.
There should be a greater emphasis on job creation in the world's 49 poorest nations, where the number of young people of working age is increasing by 16 million per year. This is according to a new report released today by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. The youth population aged 15 to 24 years in the least developed countries is expected to soar from 168 million in 2010 to 300 million by the year 2050, when 1 in 4 youths worldwide will live in least developed countries, reported by UN News.
And this one is from CBS News. Allow yourself to go nutty over nuts. Eating them may lead to a longer life. According to a new study, researchers found that people who ate nuts frequently over 30 years were less likely to die during the study period than those who skipped the high-protein snack. There is a trend here. Dr. Ying Bao, an epidemiologist researcher at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, said to CBSNews.com, "The more you consume, the more benefits you have. Previous studies have shown an association between eating large amounts of nuts and a lower chance of developing diabetes, hypertension, and other harmful health conditions." In 2003, the Food and Drug Administration approved a health claim that eating 1.5 ounces of nuts a day as part of a low-fat and cholesterol diet may reduce the risk of heart disease. So eat those nuts.
That's right. We have them here. This is from the Florida News Network out of Orlando. A JetBlue flight bound from Fort Myers to Boston had to divert to Orlando for an emergency landing, according to officials with the Federal Aviation Administration. FAA authorities said the JetBlue flight 1266 had to divert after an emergency evacuation slide opened during flight. Officials said the jet, an Embraer E190, made a safe landing at Orlando International Airport late yesterday afternoon. According to authorities, there were 78 people on board. The plane will stay on the ground while the episode is investigated and officials determine if it's something isolated to just one aircraft. Embraer is a Brazilian aircraft manufacturer which has facilities here in Florida as part of a larger business agreement. Initial investigations turned up no history of this kind of trouble with the E190 jet.
You're listening to News Bites. So this is the segment of the morning show that we created so we could deliver as much news in a short period of time as possible. By doing so, we put the news back into News Talk, and we also give you an opportunity each weekday morning to catch up on the news happening around the world in bite-sized form. We'll also give you, as often as we have it, the information that will enable you to look up the story on the internet by telling you the news agency that we got the story from. This next one comes from Bloomberg. John Stumpf, Chief Executive Officer at Wells Fargo Incorporated, says he dislikes Federal Reserve monthly bond purchases at this point in the economic cycle and that the policy has hurt savers. He said, quote, "I'm not a big fan of QE this late in the recovery." Stumpf said that yesterday at the Year Ahead 2014 two-day conference sponsored by Bloomberg LP in Chicago. He was referring to the Fed's bond purchases known as quantitative easing, QE for short. While it's helped borrowers, has really punished savers, he said. Central bank officials have been buying $85 billion in bonds each month to drive down interest rates and spur the economic recovery, swelling the Fed's balance sheet to almost $4 trillion. Some market participants have said the tactic is losing effectiveness, and economists polled by Bloomberg have predicted the Fed will begin paring purchases in March.
Microsoft announced yesterday afternoon that two of the most popular apps for the iPhone and Android phones were coming to the smartphone platform. Instagram, the must-have photo sharing app, and Waze, a popular social traffic and GPS app, are available starting now in the Windows iPhone store. Instagram in particular has been long anticipated by Windows Phone users. The lack of the app in the Windows Phone store has been one of the reasons reviewers have found it difficult to recommend a Windows Phone device. The Instagram app for Windows Phone works just like the Android and iPhone apps, although it does not include video sharing features yet. But yes, one of the most important features, taking a photo and placing a filter on top, is up and running just as you'd expect. Waze, which was purchased by Google in June, allows Windows Phone users to get traffic information from others on the road. With Waze, drivers can report traffic jams and accidents. It will then reroute users around the traffic.
And the next story is another high-tech story. It comes from IT Business Edge News. Windows 8 has not been going that well. When the product launched, the hardware wasn't ready, and neither was the product. User backlash to the massive user interface challenges hadn't been properly mitigated, and demand generation started at the time of the launch but was inadequately funded. The product attempted to embrace both Intel, AMD, x85 and ARM, but the x86 stuff either lacked touch or was too heavy and was too expensive and had too little battery life. The ARM stuff was crippled, having been given a copy of the Office that you couldn't upgrade and that didn't have Office's premier component, Outlook. The guy that led the effort got fired as a result of it. Microsoft went back in and fixed the most annoying parts of the product, and now both the x86 and the ARM-based versions are more interesting, and folks have had a year to get used to the new interface. Personally, the author Rob Enderl says, I've been using this for over a year now, and Windows 7 seems out of date and antiquated. A little over my head, some of that stuff. No idea what I just read.
Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Al-Khamenei, has said he has set limits for the country's negotiators at nuclear talks yesterday in Geneva, as senior diplomats from Iran and 6 major powers gathered again in the Swiss lakeside city 10 days after coming close to a historic deal. Khamenei delivered a defiant speech to volunteer militiamen, the Basij, in an apparent attempt to reassure the country's hardliners that the regime must not make strategic concessions. This is a quote from the Supreme Leader, Al-Khamenei. We do insist that we will not step back one iota from our rights, reported by The Guardian.
And this one is from UPI News. 3 U.S. Senate Democrats are sponsoring a measure they say would require greater transparency regarding National Security Agency surveillance. Ron Wyden of Oregon, Mark Udall of Colorado, and Barbara Mikulski of Maryland introduced the measure as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which the Senate is debating this week. The amendment would require the Department of Justice to release rulings by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in which government agencies were found to be in violation of the Constitution or the law. It would require the Director of National Intelligence to report to Congress on NSA surveillance activities and to produce a public report with certain sensitive information redacted.
The top United Nations official today is calling on foreign ministers to prioritize the environment in domestic policies and contribute to climate financing as a way of moving towards a new global climate change agreement by 2015. This is a quote from Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. This can do more than anything to unlock the huge investment necessary for climate change adaptation and mitigation.
All right, that's all the time we have for News Bites, and we do this each weekday morning. We'll do it again tomorrow morning. We try our best to squeeze as many stories into that feature as possible so that you can catch up on the news and look them up if you need to by giving you the news source that we used. Before we head over to Veterans News, I wanted to real quickly invite you to get your name into the fishbowl. WOCA is going to reserve for you 4 parking spaces here at the Paddock Mall parking lot right by Sears. 4 spaces will be waiting for you over by Sears on the evening of Thanksgiving, 1 week from today. The mall is opening up at 8 p.m. The parking lot will be packed, and there will be 4 spaces. 1 will be waiting for you if your name is picked. You will also be handed personally by Joe Martone himself a $50 gift card to Sears. So a space to park in and a $50 gift card is yours if your name is picked. You can only have your name in the fishbowl once, so if it's already in there, don't bother putting it in again. You don't need to. Yep. But if you'd like it in there and it's not there yet, give us a call at 732-8000 and tell somebody who answers the phone you'd like to have your name in the fishbowl for the parking space. 732-8000 is the number. We'll take a break and be right back with Veterans News.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.